All right, Gator fans, it is time. It is time to preview the Vandy game. I am joined right now by Billy Derrick of VandySports.com. We're going to jump right into it. All right, Billy, thank you very much for joining me. Let's
Sure
talk a
thing.
little bit about your Commodores. Vandy is 2-4 on the season, 0-2 in the SEC. But, I'm sure you're not one for moral victories, and I'm not either. But has played somewhat respectably, though, to start the year. Close loss to UNLV, and then they played Kentucky a lot better than Florida did. What are your overall thoughts on how the season is going relative to the expectations up there?
Yeah, it's really a pretty easy question to answer. It's been a bad year. I mean, Vanderbilt at this point, has underperformed. I think the fans had high expectations. This coaching staff had high expectations. I think they were expecting a potential bowl season. And last year they were on the doorstep. They finished 5-7, and most likely they overachieved last year, right? I mean, beating Kentucky and Florida last year, you can say that they did overachieve, but in the SEC, it doesn't matter how you do it, right? You got there. They got to 5 wins last year, and natural progression is okay. Year 3, you should probably get to a bowl game, right? If you want to try to continue that growth of the program. So, yeah, I mean, compared to preseason expectations, it's been totally off. At least personally for me, and for me, I thought UNLV would be a little bit of a swing game, right? Dangerous game. You don't quite know how good UNLV is. Barry Odom has done a really good job at UNLV in an area where there's a ton of talent, right? I think he'll get UNLV going. So Vanderbilt lost that one. I think that one has done a lot of damage to this team mentally. I think it's really taken a toll on the fan base, coaching staff, players. So you lose to UNLV, and then you lose to Wake Forest as well. That Wake Forest game was actually right before UNLV.
Right.
But the Wake Forest loss, there was still, there was still hope. The season was still alive, right? You lost to Wake, but you've got a chance to bounce right back and go beat UNLV, but you lost. So Vanderbilt right now is they're not even sitting at a crossroads. They're past it, right? I think this is a game where I'm sure we'll get into it, but this is a game where both teams are not happy. Florida is probably more angry than Vanderbilt. And I think that's what Vandy fans are scared of. But Vanderbilt, it's a program you never really know what to expect. I mean, going into last year's game, I was saying Vandy has no shot, right? Florida's hot. There's no way. But Vanderbilt turns around and they beat Florida at home. And the students single file storm the field. So so you never know. I mean, that's how college football is nowadays. You just really never know. So it'll be interesting, though. But to answer your question, it's been totally opposite of what I think most people expected out of this Vanderbilt team.
Do you think that there's any bit of confidence among the fans that this weekend could go y'all's way because of how last year's game went?
No, I don't think fans are confident in anything this team is doing right now. I mean, you lose to UNLV, you lose to Wake Forest, and like I said, the UNLV loss did so much damage. It's probably similar to the Florida loss in Nashville last year. There's just certain losses in team seasons that it's virtually impossible to bounce back from. I mean, I remember Tennessee's loss to Georgia State under under Jeremy Pruitt. Like, there's just losses. Arkansas's this year to BYU. It's just hard for everyone to get past those losses. So no, I mean, to answer your question, I think deep down, if you asked some fans, I think there's always a chance, right? I mean, you can always convince yourself, especially the closer you get to kickoff.
Of course.
I think for me to really dig deep, I think there are probably some fans maybe sitting there saying, okay, Florida's a team we beat last year. They're not the same Florida that we're used to, especially under Spurrier, early in Dan Mullen, not late. I know it was sort of a catastrophe there late under Dan Mullen, but it just doesn't feel like the same, dominant Florida team under Spurrier in a lot of those early years. So I think if you had to really try to find fans that believe they can beat Florida, but in college football, there's always a shot. So I'm not, I wouldn't totally eliminate the possibility, but 18 points, that's a lot. Vegas does not give Vandy any shot, and I really don't either, to be honest.
Well, there's a little bit of a chance. That's why we play the games on Saturdays. All right. So quarterback, big question up there right now. AJ Swain, obviously, if he's available in theory, right? He's not 100%. We're not 100% sure if he's going to play. What are you hearing up there? And if it's not him, who will you be trotting out at quarterback?
Yeah, so AJ Swan got banged up in that UNLV game.
Yeah.
He had an elbow contusion, and he actually ended up playing through that in the second half and almost leading them to victory. And he's the best quarterback on the team. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the clips even from last year, his freshman year. He's a playmaker, but he's still young. He's a sophomore. So, but in terms of his health, Clark Lee said that they're taking the quarterback position day by day right now. And well, it's Thursday, so I mean, I think.
Right.
A decision has probably been made. My gut tells me Ken Seals, the backup, will start. AJ Swan has just not played well the last few games.
Yeah.
He's turned the ball over. I'm sure you guys saw the Kentucky game, 2 pick sixes. You're just you're not going to beat anybody. I mean, that could have happened against really most teams on Vanderbilt's schedule, and they would not have found a way to bounce back, much less Kentucky, right? And without those, Vanderbilt is in that game, right? I don't know if you guys see the chart, the analytic charts. There's so many analytics out there now, but if Vanderbilt eliminates the turnovers in that Kentucky game, they've got a very good shot to compete in that fourth quarter. But yeah, so Swan, that's been the issue. I think they're going with Seals because he's the better option right now. I think health is out of the equation. AJ Swan is healthy. He could start this game. But I believe you're going to see Ken Seals out there. You still might see Swan. If you guys remember last year, it was all Mike Wright, right? Yeah. So he was able to, kind of do what he can on the ground and Ray Davis, but neither of those two guys are on the team anymore, right? Mike Wright's at Mississippi State. Ray Davis is at Kentucky.
We know about Ray Davis as Gator fan.
Yeah, and Vandy does too. Although Vanderbilt, I think, held him to under 80 yards, which I thought was interesting. But yeah.
Not that we're bitter over here, but
no, he's an incredible back, and I think he was a big part of that win over Florida last year. So I feel for Florida people with Ray Davis. He's done that to a lot of teams. That's why he's going to be an NFL back. I think he's that good. So, but yeah, to answer your question about the quarterbacks, I think you will see Seals. You might see Swan, but I would bet it's going to be Ken Seals. He takes care of the ball. It's not a very explosive offense when he's in the game, but I think you can count on him to protect the football, and that's what Vanderbilt needs right now because Swan just hasn't done that.
Patrick Smith and Cedric Alexander are kind of a bit of a two-headed monster for you guys at running back. Both are averaging over 4 yards a carry on the season. How would you grade this Vandy rushing attack?
Well, we actually did this earlier this week on the Vandy Sports podcast on our Wednesday weekly podcast, and I think I gave them. I wrote it down. I don't know where it is, but I think I gave them a C. And here's why. I've heard people give them an F, D, but I just think they are who they are. They're not. Neither of them are Ray Davis type of running backs,
sure.
Right? They're not guys that are gonna break 60, 70, 80-yard runs in an instant, right? Ray Davis, you just saw against Florida, he can do that. They don't have that guy. So Florida fans instantly probably saying, thank God, like we don't have to face another Ray Davis. You said monster. I don't know if I would use the word monster describing Vanderbilt's running back room. I know that's the typical phrase, but sure. They just have not been able to run the football. I put more of that on the offensive line. They have gotten zero push. They've been better in pass protection, but they just haven't gotten any push. And so for these backs, Cedric Alexander is a freshman. He's the more talented guy. I think he has a higher ceiling. Patrick Smith is, he's a veteran. I think if you remember a couple of years ago, he was a freshman and he played in Gainesville. I think Florida dominated Vanderbilt, but one of his first appearances was in Gainesville a couple of years ago, his freshman year. So he's familiar with that area and playing in that stadium. But yeah, it's not a very talented and experienced room. Although Alexander has talent, their talent is very young. They've got a couple other freshmen that are young. It's young and inexperienced talent. But yeah, they're just sort of piecing it together right now. They don't have the offensive line. I think Florida has a similar issue right now. They just have not been able to establish any consistency in the run game. and that in the SEC will hurt you. I mean, it has hurt both these teams, and so that's why I think we could see probably a sloppy, maybe an ugly type game. But yeah, in terms of the running backs for Vanderbilt, they just haven't gotten any push, and that's been the biggest reason. It's nothing against the backs, because I think you put a good offensive line in front of them, they could do a whole lot better. But I mean, last week their leading rusher was a receiver, their slot receiver. So it kind of tells you where Vanderbilt's at in the run game.
All right. Well, you already told me a little bit about the offensive line, based on the running back question, but tell me a little bit about Vanderbilt's defensive line. They were able to hold up fairly well in last year's contest. And honestly, Florida's offensive line last year was better than it is this year. We had an All-American on it. What are you expecting from the matchup this game?
Yeah, Vanderbilt's defensive line looks similar to last year's, but they have not been as active as I expected them to be. Last year, you're right, they were able to put some pressure on on Richardson, and Richardson, I think, got flustered at times. They ended up having a shot, that last throw at the end zone. But yeah, they're really strategic with their blitz packages. I think I would give more credit to the linebackers and even a lot of the safety blitz that they utilize on this defense. And I think they were able to do that against Florida last year. But on that D line, I look at their sophomore edge rusher, Darren Agu. He's 6'6", 242 pounds. He's coming off an injury, so he's the guy for them that if Vanderbilt is getting to the quarterback, he is probably doing it, right? He's the one getting there. They've also got some experienced guys, Nate Clifton, Christian James up there, and in the interior of that D-line, Devin Lee. They got a guy who's 6'7", 305 from Germany. His name is Issa Wataha. Yeah, he is massive, but he's a sophomore. He's young, and I think that's a common theme with both these teams, right? They've got talent, but they're just so young and inexperienced. And when you're using those type of guys in the SEC, it's hard to be consistent, right? They show flashes, but it's hard for them to maintain, week in, week out. So, but yeah, I think for Vanderbilt, if they're getting pressure on the quarterback, it's because of strategic blitz packages. It's not because they're, manhandling an offensive line. I don't think they've done that against anybody this year. Maybe Alabama A&M, in the second half of that game. Vanderbilt's just not there yet as a program. But a few guys to keep an eye on. Number 11, Darren Agu off the edge. Number 15, Nate Clifton up the middle as well. Number 5, Issa Wataha. And then you've got some other guys that kind of do their part as role players. They're just like many other positions on this team right now. They're young, they're inexperienced, they're unproven, but they show flashes at times. So if Vanderbilt can get the same pressure they did last year against Florida, it's because of those blitz packages. They're just not quite ready yet to dominate an offensive line on the other side yet.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your perception of this Florida team. What do you think has Vanderbilt most concerned going into the game against the Gators?
I would say that Florida running game. I know Trevor Etienne is questionable. I don't know if you guys know anything else on that. I know a lot of times players are questionable. They're not actually questionable. They're gonna play. I don't know about Etienne, but they've also got Montrell Johnson. They've got some other young running backs back there. But I just think that running game scares Vanderbilt. They've been better as of late, but a lot of there's been a couple of teams that have been able to run the football on Vanderbilt. Wake Forest was able to run the football on Vanderbilt. Missouri last week was able to run the football. They held Kentucky in check, which is interesting. I mean, that's the best running back in the SEC. It's
really, really well. So that probably helps a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's something to point to if you're the coaching staff. Like, look, guys, I mean, we held Ray Davis to under 80 yards. Like that, we should be able to do this against Florida. We should be able to do this against everybody.
Right.
But it still scares, like, for fans, for putting yourself in the fan perspective, it still scares them that you look at Etienne and Montrell Johnson. I know Graham Mertz hasn't ran a ton. I think he has the capability to do that. But the play action game, right? Florida is not your typical, high-powered, explosive offense, right? They're more of a ground and pound team that wants to wear you down in the fourth quarter. And I thought it was interesting. Billy Napier said that after the Kentucky loss last week, right? He said, that's the type of program we want to be, right? We're just not there yet, right? We want to be a physically imposing, dominant team that can wear a team down in the fourth quarter. I think that's what scares Vanderbilt, right? This could be close, but you get to the fourth quarter and Florida's just still running it, pounding Vanderbilt up the middle. And it's just, there's not much you can do when you're young and inexperienced like Vanderbilt is. I think defensively, the pass rush, I think is his name Desmond Watson, the big. I mean, I don't even know. He's a freaking monster. Yeah. I mean, he didn't do much last year against Vanderbilt, which I think is a good sign. But you can only keep him down for so long. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of Florida players chomping at the bit to play Vanderbilt and beat Vanderbilt again. I saw a quote from Montrell Johnson saying he was crying after the game, and saying, they just couldn't believe they lost that game. So I think that's what Vanderbilt overall, like if you asked a fan what they're scared of in this game, it's just the anger factor, right? The revenge factor. I know you guys had Trap Game up here. There's potential. I think there's more potential for Florida to just come out and manhandle Vanderbilt. And maybe it's close for a half, but Florida in the fourth quarter just wins it. So I think that is probably what scares Vandy fans the most, the revenge factor. Napier getting these guys ready to roll and fired up and just put it on them. And Vanderbilt, they might be catching them just at a bad time.
Well, Vanderbilt fans' worst nightmare would be Gator fans, fantasy. So all the Gator fans listening right now are like, oh my gosh, I hope that happens. That's what I want to see. But I'm going to ask you to be a prognosticator for a minute. If we look up, and this is a game in the second half, what has gone right for Vanderbilt?
It's a good question. It's so hard to imagine that. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. But no, I think if this is a game in the fourth quarter, you look up and it's either tied or a one-score game. I think Vanderbilt has created turnovers and they've gotten points off those turnovers, right? Because in the last 3 or 4 games, Vanderbilt has created actually a decent amount of turnovers. They just have either gotten field goals or no points, right? And they've gotten them. They haven't really flipped the field, right? But other teams for Vanderbilt that Vanderbilt's played, they have taken advantage of the turnovers that Vanderbilt has committed. So if this is a game in the fourth quarter, I think Vanderbilt has forced Graham Mertz into throws he doesn't want to make and have maybe forced a fumble of one of the running backs or a special teams muffed punt. We saw that last year. That was a huge swing in that game in Florida. That punt, I feel bad for that punt return. He's probably still kicking himself about that because he knows that was such a huge part in that game, such a momentum shift, and momentum is so huge in football, especially at the SEC level. So I think special teams creating havoc, whether it's another muff punt like that or Vanderbilt getting a fumble or an interception and creating takeaways that turn into points. I think that is the main reason. I don't even want to get into offense. I don't think Vanderbilt's offense will be the reason it's a game. I just think it's defense and special teams because right now the offense just can't be relied upon at this moment.
All right, it's my favorite time in our guest segment. Give me your score prediction.
Yeah, I thought about this last couple of days. I'm gonna go Florida to win, but I think, as I've been saying, I think it's close throughout really 3 quarters, and then Florida scores a late touchdown or two. But I'm gonna give Florida. I think it's low scoring. I'm gonna go Florida 27, Vanderbilt 21. I think Vandy. I just think Vandy is. They're due for something. And I think Florida is a team they match up better with because Florida, they're not a Missouri type of offense, right? Missouri is a team with Cook and Burden and those receivers that they can really light up your defense. I just don't think Florida's offense can quite do that. Now maybe they do. Maybe they come out and demolish Vanderbilt. And I might even err on the side of that, but I'll go a little bit closer. Florida 27, Vanderbilt 21.
All right, Billy, thank you so much for coming on. Super appreciated. Let everybody know where they can find your work, where they can find you on social media, and check out all your things.
Yeah, vandysports.com. You can follow me on Twitter, BillyDerrick10. Also, log on to vandysports.com. We've got a lot of great stories and content. Also, our YouTube channel. We'll have a preview of this game actually out tomorrow morning. And we had, I'm sure you guys know Gator David Waters. We had him on to preview the matchup. So, yeah, it's good stuff. We also got a lot of content on our YouTube channel. So, thank you for having me on, Allie.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. We're going to go check out the preview tomorrow. We love Gator Dave. He is the best. You
Yeah.
have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate all of you who have already liked this video. Listen, if you have questions or comments that we need to answer, or you just want to show the show a little love, hit that super chat button and we will make sure that we put it on the screen. I want to share some thoughts, but first, I want to take a quick moment to give some love to Prize Picks. Several of you guys, and I mean several of you guys, have deposited using my code PEEK, P-E-E-K, and there's a whole group of you guys that have signed up but haven't yet made your first deposit. Go fix that right now. Use the code PEEK, P-E-E-K, on the Prize Picks app. There is a 100% deposit match up to $100 if you enter that code. Prize Picks, honestly, is the best way to have action on the game in states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, California, and over 70% of the United States. Take the more or less on two Gators or any player that are playing on Saturday, and if they both hit, you win. Again, PEEK, P-E-E-K, on the Prize Picks app. Let's make some money this weekend, guys. All right, so we just heard from Billy Derrick. He told us a little bit about the Vanderbilt team, what we can expect coming in, and he does not seem particularly confident. Vanderbilt is 2-4, and they fell to Missouri last weekend, 38-21. The Commodores haven't won since beating Hawaii and Alabama A&M in the first 2 weeks of the season. So they are on a 4-game slide right now. And they're kind of in a tough spot with injuries. It has improved over the last couple games, but they have a wide receiver, Landon Humphreys, who is questionable. He has a banged up ankle. Obviously, we talked a little bit about quarterback AJ Swan. He's probable with his elbow, but you heard Billy say he thinks that he probably wouldn't be the starter even if he's 100%, and that he honestly could go on Saturday, but they think that he isn't for other reasons. They don't think Billy doesn't think that AJ gives them the best chance to win because of his interceptions that have happened recently. So that's kind of an interesting take there. Their most significant new injury is to Kane Patterson. He is a big, strong linebacker for them. He got injured against Missouri. There are 3 different guys, Brian Longwell, Nick Rinaldi, and Bryce Cowan, that are a combination of those 3 are probably who are going to replace them. But Kane Patterson is a big blow to their defense. So that's something to watch. And now the Gators have our largest injury report since the season started as well. We've got Dante Zanders is out. Now, Eugene Wilson will be back for the Gators. So that is huge. Tony Livingston is back. We get Marcus Burke back. But we are missing some major offensive linemen. We're missing Austin Barber and Kingsley Iguakin. These are 2 huge pieces to the puzzle, both literally and figuratively, who are more than likely out, according to the injury report, questionable. We have been told that they are not going to play, and that is the same information that we have, unfortunately, about Trevor Etienne. We have been told that he will not play. So, we'll see. He's listed as questionable, but not the kind of injury report that makes fans happy for sure. So that's going to be something to watch. That means Montrell Johnson is going to carry the bulk of the load. Webb will get touches as well. But if Etienne can't go, it's kind of a problem. Let's talk a little bit more about how Vandy has been performing. They've been scoring 31.3 points per game, which ranks them 56th in D1 college football. They're averaging 371 total yards. And 97 of those are rushing, 274 of those are through the air. They have converted 38% of their third down attempts, and they score on 78% of their red zone trips, which, if I'm remembering correctly, that is actually better than Florida is doing in the red zone. So, that's something to watch for sure. Now, on defense, though, they surrender 33.3 points a game, which is bad. It's 115th nationally, and 408 total yards per game. That includes 261 in the air and 147.8 rushing yards. They have registered 10 sacks, 7 interceptions on the season, though, which, that looks a lot better than Florida's sacks and interception numbers for sure. Their opponents have converted 50.7% of their third down attempts and scored on 86% of their red zone. I don't need to tell you too much about Florida because I know you guys already know, but quick recap, the Gators are 3-2. They lost to Kentucky 33-14 last Saturday. They hadn't lost since Utah before that Kentucky loss. They're an 18.5 point spread favorite, and the game total is 52 points. Now, remember, Vanderbilt upset the Gators 31-24 last season. That ended an 8-game skid versus UF, and I think they liked the taste of it. We all watched those students single file line onto the field. And Florida was dominated on the road at Kentucky last week. We talked a little bit about Ray Davis. He rushed for a career high 280 yards, 4 touchdowns. Florida really couldn't get their ground game going at all. It does make me wonder, with us knowing ETN is banged up, if that played a role in that at all. Willie rushed for 69 yards. That's on 29 attempts. That's pitiful. And Kentucky only had 69 passing yards, but they somehow beat us by 19 points. So Florida needs to play better. In just a second, I'm going to give you my keys to the game, but Florida's defense has got to show up. Now, this is going to be an interesting recruiting week for the Gators. There, of course, will always be recruits in attendance, but there's one that I want to draw your attention to, or maybe two. Jordan Seaton is going to be in Gainesville for his official visit. He is the highest rated offensive lineman left on our board at a position of major need for the Gators. We need offensive linemen, and we need them fast. Seaton is 6'5", 285 pounds. He's from Washington, D.C., but he currently attends IMG Academy in Bradenton. He is a 5-star guy. Everyone wants him. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida State, all the big boys want Jordan Seaton. I've also been told that DJ Lagway will be in Gainesville this weekend. He's bringing his high school coach, Trent Miller, with him, and no doubt that is going to help the Gators put the full court press on Jordan Seaton. You know this coaching staff would love for them to build a relationship together and for DJ to get in on the recruiting. He has been, honestly, the best recruiter for the Gators so far. So making sure he's sitting right next to Seaton in his ear, talking about what they can accomplish at the University of Florida, I'm sure is on their list of things to do. DJ Lagway had some stuff to say about this coaching staff this week, and honestly, it should make Gator fans really happy. He talked about knowing that there is a plan in place, knowing that there are young guys that are going to continue to improve. He can't wait to get to Gainesville. He can't wait to see what he can do with Billy Napier. He knows this coaching staff is going to pull it together. He has faith in them. He has trust in them. He knows that they're bringing in a huge class that is really a massive piece to this overall Napier puzzle. So, for all those people that said, is that Kentucky game going to make him decommit? Is he going to look elsewhere? Lagway made sure to go on record talking about how much confidence he has in this coaching staff. So honestly, it's a great weekend to get him here. Great weekend to show his high school coach a little bit about Gainesville and to convince Jordan Seaton that Gainesville could use his services next year. All right, guys, every week I tell you what I need to see on the field. Some of these things are not quite different from what I needed to see last week against Kentucky and didn't. First and foremost, I need this offense to be at least semi-functional. I need the offensive line to provide Mertz some time. I need Mertz to make the right reads and maybe look for a wide receiver who doesn't have the last name Pearsall on the back of his jersey. And I need our running backs to be able to get some ground yardage. We have got to be able to run for a couple hundred yards. Okay. Last week, unacceptable. Couldn't get it going. Couldn't make the holes appear. Offensive line, really, I think that's where the problems kind of started and ended last week for the Gators. They've got to do better. That is a huge challenge this week because they are without Kingsley Eguakin and they are without Austin Barber. So how do the guys, the backups, do? Do they step up? Do they make a name for themselves? Do they show this coaching staff that they are prepared and ready to fill in when necessary? It's a tall task, but I need to see it. Defense needs to show me that last week was a fluke. Okay, we talk about this week on this channel. We have talked a lot about the fact that who is Florida? Was Tennessee, the offense we saw at Tennessee, the fluke? Or is the games we've seen afterwards the fluke? And for that, I think we kind of have an answer until I'm shown otherwise. The Tennessee offense was a fluke. But Florida's defense has been very good in every game except the Kentucky game. So my hope is the Kentucky game was the fluke for this defense. They're going to show up. They're going to be ready. We know this Vanderbilt offense is turnover prone. I need to see sacks. I need to see hurries, and I would love to see some turnovers. The Gators need to win the turnover battle. And special teams, guys, we lost this game last year because of special teams. We gave Kentucky 7 points from a special teams mistake last week. I need to see the special teams get 11 guys on the field every single time. Don't show me any penalties I've never heard of before, except for when they take the field. And you have to play better. I need to see it. Kicking game's improved. Punting game's improved. I need to see kickoff return, punt return. I need to see 11 men on the field every single time. Not 10, not 13, 11. And Mertz needs to continue to take what the defense gives him. Prior to Kentucky, he did that pretty darn well through the first 4 games of the season. I need to have him return to that form against Vanderbilt. And then, I already said it, but it's a 5th point. And I'm going to hit it home. Pressure from the defense that actually forces turnovers, sacks, and hurries. This Vanderbilt offense is not good. We literally had their beat writer on here telling us if they win, it's sure as heck not going to be because of Vanderbilt's offense. So the Gators need to take advantage of that. And listen, this game, I said this last week, but it's true this week. This game could set up how the rest of the season goes. If you cannot beat Vanderbilt, it becomes difficult to find any more wins on this schedule. After Vanderbilt, you've got South Carolina. You want to go into that game with another win under your belt. Then you can go to South Carolina and potentially go into Georgia 5-2. But it has to start on Saturday. The Gators have got to figure out a way to beat Vanderbilt. And honestly, if they don't, who do they beat? Do they beat South Carolina? South Carolina is better than Vanderbilt. Do they beat Arkansas? I don't know. It's at home. I guess that helps. Do they beat Missouri? We just had Billy Derrick telling us how Missouri is great and they have a high-flying offense. I don't know that we can stop that. We're sure as heck not beating Georgia, LSU, and Florida State if we can't stop Vanderbilt. But it starts Saturday. Get a W then. Take every single week individually how it comes. And this team still has the ability to finish 7-5. All right, it is time to make a prediction. But first, I want to give some love to Meldon Law. I've been telling you about them for weeks, and we are so proud to work with them and support all the things that they do. They are the official injury firm of the Florida Gators, and they should be your official injury firm as well. Make sure you go to their Facebook and enter to win tickets in their Florida Georgia giveaway. Also, for home games, when they're out there right in front of the O'Connell Center, stop by, visit their tent. I did the last time I was in town. It was a great time. They're giving away prizes. They've got music. It's a great atmosphere. Go check it out. Also, I've got 2 tickets to give away for this game on Saturday. They are great seats on the 50-yard line. this is what you have to do. The very first person in the comments of this YouTube video that, one, has the ability to for sure go to the game on Saturday, two, enters their email address and hits send, you will get 2 50-yard line tickets to the Vanderbilt Florida game. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It is time for my favorite part of the night, prediction time. I think Florida rebounds from their game against Kentucky, pulls it together, and I think they beat Vanderbilt 27-3. I think they cover the spread. I think they give the home crowd a nice little show, and we head into South Carolina with some confidence. If you enjoyed this live or any of the other videos we've done this week, do me a huge favor, subscribe to the channel. We are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the FSU game. It is a lofty goal, but if you help me, I think we can get there. If you want to recap on some of the hard questions that the Gators need to answer, you can go ahead and click right here. I don't know if TJ can get that link up for me, but go watch the video, check it out. There is some burning questions that I know Gator fans want to know. I will see you guys in the swamp on Saturday. Go Gators.